kind of, in a sense, a tribute to veterans, just because there are so many of them, and going back to, all the way to World War II, those are the ones that slowly but surely are dying away, and I still believe they're heroes and they deserve their honor, and there's so many stories untold.
When I went into what?
Into the service?
May of 1944, during the Second World War.
And what branch did he go into?
Navy.
So you're moving from
Where did you fight in combat there?
In Southwest Pacific.
And what did you do while you were there?
Well, we chased submarines, and we did a little aircraft shooting. But we didn't harm anybody.
nursing services?
We did more shooting than anything else.
When you got back from the South Pacific, where did you go next?
I went home for 6 months, then I entered the Air Force.
And with the Air Force, did you see combat there?
Did I what?
With the Air Force, did you get deployed?
Yeah, I had to go into the Air Force to fly. I couldn't go into flight school for civilian status. I had to join the Air Force to go as enlisted.
You went to Korea with the Air Force, right?
Yeah.
And what did you do? Were you a fighter pilot?
Well, a fighter bomber, yeah. The airplane I flew, the P-51, was the big airplane of World War II. But by Korea, it got replaced by the jets. And it was just an airplane.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience in Korea?
There wasn't much to it. All we did was get up in the morning and go fly a mission, which was usually a rail cut. By that I mean we'd cut some railroad in two with bombs. Occasionally we'd get ammo dumps and things like that. I blew up one big one on the front. It was still blowing the next day, still exploding. But it was kind of run-of-the-mill stuff. It was a job. We got up, did our job, came home. And we had to do 100 missions. And I got shot down on my 30th.
Can you talk a little bit about that when you got shot down?
Oh yeah, Nick got me. And my wingman said, love to, that was my call sign. Bail out, you're on fire. And I said, aren't we supposed to say something like there's a big on your butt break? And he didn't answer. Anyway, the MiG shot me down. I looked out and I could see the shells over on the side. And they stand out real good. So I thought, he's in a jet, he can't pull negative G's. I'll pull some negative G's and get out of his way. But when I went over like that, he actually hit me in the tail section and destroyed my coolant system. And so I flew the airplane, putting prime on it, coolant with prime, for about 5 miles, and finally it just seized. And there's no more coolant in the system.
Actually, I was in Air Force, Army, and the Marines.
Oh, in which order?
Huh?
In which order?
Air Force first, Army second, and the Marines last. Then when I got back to the States, I was back in the back in the Air Force again. So it's like when you're over in Nam, you do whatever they want.
Yeah.
So.
When did you go into the service? Were you drafted?
No, I went in '65 when I got out of high school. I volunteered. I was young when I got out of high school. I was only 17, and I forged my mom's John Henry to the enlistment stuff, and in I went. So.
Why did you volunteer? Why did you join? Why did you volunteer? Why did you join?
Well, I felt it was the right thing to do, and even though now looking back on things, and you see that they kind of mishandled the entire war thing. It's like I'm not saying that it was the wrong thing to do. I still think that it was right to go. And it was a whole different time back then. We still had, I mean, the Cold War was going on, and it was intense. And I figured this was like one place that we might be able to, to stop the, the threat.
Well, first, I would like to know which branch you were in while you were in the service, and I don't know if you joined or were drafted, so if you could go into a little detail there.
Certainly. I did serve in the United States Army. And how did I get into the Army? I was, while I was in college, preparing to be an educator. I wanted to be a teacher. And of course, this was in the mid to the latter part of the 1960s. And I watched the lottery for the draft, and somehow my number was always under 50. So I was pretty well assured that I was destined to serve in the military. After completing my student teaching on a Friday afternoon in the fall of 1968, less than 24 hours, I was reclassified from my student deferment to 1A. And so that Monday I called the local draft board and I asked them how many months I possibly could have. And they said, you probably won't see Christmas. And that was only 30 days away. So I know, or at that time I knew that it was pretty serious. So I started looking around, and I'm not a hero of any sorts or anything of that nature. And I looked at the Air Force, I looked at the Navy, I looked at the Army, I looked at the Marines and what have you. And after doing that research, I did enlist in the United States Army. And starting in early January of 1969, I was at basic training.
And you were deployed to Vietnam. Can you talk a little bit about, how the transition from basic training, how fast did you get sent over there, and what was your job?
Okay. Well, I'm going to work backwards a little bit from what my job was in Vietnam. From basic training, which was an 8-week period of time, then I went to advanced infantry training, which kind of was a message of what I was going to end up with without hesitation. But when I did enlist, I enlisted for the Officers Candidate School and to go to OCS in Fort Benning, Georgia. And once I completed advanced infantry training, then I did go to OCS, and I did not find that was my cup of tea. I had no problem with leading men into harm's way, in a manner of speaking, but it just was not the right fit for me. So I looked for the other alternatives other than being the typical, excuse the expression, grunt, which is, infantry's classified with. And I discovered that there was a program called Scout Dogs. And Scout Dogs is working with the German Shepherd breed, and they complement the infantry. So I was accepted into that program. It entailed another 8 weeks of training with a German Shepherd to learn the skills of the German Shepherd dog in their ability to alert using their senses, and then also working with the dog. So after that was completed, then I was sent to Vietnam. And so my job in Vietnam was called a scout dog handler, working with the German Shepherd. What that entailed was a walking point. And you might work with a squad, you might work with a platoon, you might work with a company, but the purpose of walking point with whatever mission you are assigned to is the dog's senses are so much more acute, so much more keen than a human senses. And so that's why German Shepherds were utilized, and it was a fascinating experience. For example, the term is that a German Shepherd dog would show you an alert. That alert may be from the sense of smell, hearing, sight, or even touch. Of course, we see dogs smell and their noses bounce, and so that would be an alert. Or their ears, remember German Shepherd's ears stand up and they would twitch in a manner of speaking. And of course, eyesight, they would just look straight forward if they detected something out there. And then their sense of touch, if there was, the ground gave way and that the old typical bungee pit and everything else, or some other type of harm's way, a tripwire, they would give you the alert and you would stop, and then that's how we use the German Shepherd dogs.
When you were out at Cole Elementary,
Pardon?
when you were out at the school the other day, you told the children you were a prisoner of war.
Yes. They captured me about 10 minutes after I was on the ground, I guess. And they were civilians. Didn't really want to surrender to them because they killed most of the pilots. Statistic most people don't understand. There were 1,200 pilots shot down. Only 200 of us made it home. Now, some of them were killed in the airplanes. I don't know. But, if you'd seen North Korea, you'd see why they didn't like us. Because we'd bombed it back to the Stone Age. That's all that was left of it. It was shacks and houses. They'd take a house, 2-story, they put a roof down there on the first story, inside. And here it looked like it was bombed out, and he had to still live. We'd put them back to the rough position. Yes, I was captured by some civilians, and they, as a rule, killed you. But before they could do anything, the army, Chinese army, apprehended me and took me away. As I was walking away, we encountered some Russians. And at the time, I couldn't say that because that was classified. But they wanted to take me and hang me. They were giving the old signal. And the Chinese wanted to keep me, so they were pulling one arm, the Russians are pulling the other arm. I'm leaning towards the Chinese because they looked like the best bet. And drawing a blank. Anyway, the Russian released me and hit me in the face a couple of times. And the Chinese took me up to their gun position. It was right by an airfield. They had some anti-aircraft there. And the first thing they did was take all my clothes. And I was sitting there in the May in North Korea, which is pretty darn cold, in nothing but my shorts. Then I found out why they took my clothes. I rolled right through some waist. When you touch down with a parachute, you're supposed to bend your knees and roll. I rolled and rolled through some of the biggest cow miles, cow pies you can do. So I smelled pretty ripe, I guess, when I came in the gun.
Thank you very much for bringing it out.
Can you tell us why the civilians killed the American pilots?
Excuse me?
Can you tell us why the civilians killed the American pilots?
Why they killed American pilots? If you'd seen the country, you'd have understood it. We had destroyed it. There was just nothing left for it. And we're the ones doing the bombing. South Africans were in our squadron. Well, they flew P-51s too. And they helped on it, but mainly it was an American show. And that's why they did it. And we didn't always bomb according to the Geneva Convention. We bombed where we were told. Sometimes they weren't the best spots.
You didn't want it too big for the
Can you talk a little bit how it was in the camp with those Chinese?
Well, I was never in a camp.
You need those
That
Broncos.
conception there. I was in isolation the whole time. I was kept in a cell by myself. And I didn't even get to see the other prisoners. When I marched down the road, there was a prisoner or a group of prisoners coming. They'd march me off and face me away from the road. So nobody could see me or I couldn't see anybody. That way they could lie about what they had, who they had. And we used to go up in the corner of the room and scratch our name in the plate. And I used to go around and transfer me around building to building and memorize those names. I memorized them alphabetically. And when I came back, I don't know how many I gave them, 20 or 30. None of them came out. They died. Food was poor. I went down at 180 and came out at 110. So the food was really bad. And that was in a year and a half.
What was some of the worst time for you during that time?
Oh, Christmas. Times like that were just impossible to bear. You can just imagine what was going on back home. Here you are sitting in this lousy cell all by yourself, never knowing whether you're going to go home or not. And they always kept that a big secret, where I was going to get out. And they took all the prisoners out, and they took a bonus group of 15 or 20 out, and they came and got 3 of us. They took us out. We were never sure that we were going to live through the whole thing.
So, how did you get out?
Well, the war finally ended, and the reason I knew it ended because there was no aircraft flying overhead. Every day we had airplanes. So I asked the Chinese if the war had ended. Interrogated, he says, yes. I said, when am I going? Home. He just turned around and walked out. Didn't say a word to me. Then it was, I think, 3 weeks almost until I got out. And we were the last ones out. So they were still trying to make up their mind. I didn't take any guys too. Because I knew there was too much propaganda I could do too when I got out. They were talking about how nice we had it. I lived in the best cell with a bamboo mat on the floor. In the winter I had one blanket pulled over me and put under me. It wasn't too warm. North Korea gets very cold.
Tell me about your time in the service and about Vietnam. Tell me about your time in the service and in Vietnam. And,
Okay.
You know, I think everyone kind of has some good memories about everything, but also the bad ones that you always take with you from working with soldiers in Germany. I know that's always something.
Yeah. I went over there. I had volunteered not only to enlist, but I had volunteered to go over to Nam as well. And when I first arrived over there, basically my job was to load bombs and ammo there on the planes. And I felt I wasn't doing enough at the time. So I kept adding in other things that I would volunteer for. It was in explosive ordnance disposal for a while, until, since I was the new guy on the team, I was sent out to get a tool that we didn't have to disarm a Russian bomb, and halfway back the bomb blew and the rest of my team was in pieces. And so they removed me from that, thinking that I would have that on my mind, and the next time I was doing something that I might be, doop, and then everybody go. So I went back to loading the bombs and ammo, and then they called down, they needed a volunteer for an intra-service team, and to go back behind the lines to set off explosives and stuff to blow up the bridges, roads, and, you know, other items. And things which you wouldn't need anymore because they got the smart bombs and all this high-tech stuff, so you can like see everything. And what the Agent Orange did not remove from the site there, we just went in and we went around and we went ahead and did it. We had a Marine in charge, we had a Navy SEAL on the team, we had a Ranger, and we had me. And I would set the explosives above the water line. The Navy SEAL would go below the water line. The Ranger was basically, he'd been in the service the longest amount of time. He'd been in for 28 years, and he was a master at finding his way around anywhere. I mean, he could get in and get out, and the Marine in charge would actually listen to him more than anything because this guy knew his stuff. But what happened was we had set our last bomb off, and this bridge was blown up, and we were heading on back to our home base to get orders for what to hit there next. And we got attached to a Ranger team. Well, it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining bright. I mean, really, really bright. And there was this really big opening in the jungle. And the idiot in charge of the Rangers decided to go straight on through instead of going around. Not a very wise move. We had mists that were up to like here, and you couldn't see anything that might have been set in the ground. Well, as it was, there was a lot, and I was the only one left alive in the whole thing. I woke up the next day, and it's like there were people scattered everywhere, blood and guts coming on down from the brush and the trees and all over the ground. Well, before I could leave, the Vietnamese returned, and there I was, and so I was marched on off to a camp, and spent some time there. But a lot of people, when you talk about the camps over in you think of the large camps that had hundreds of of the guys and all that. Well, the one I was in had like 8, and we never saw each other. We were all in separate things, and So they were kind of like disposable things. I mean, if our guys would get like close, they could just leave in a hurry. And I always knew that if having us go and slow them down, that wasn't going to happen. That we would be, toast. But one night, our guys were bombing the heck out of something, and I could hear the folks run on off there to see, what happened, and they really goofed. They only left one man there to watch us, and even though everything was locked, I had lost a lot of weight, but I still had enough strength and everything. And I got down at the one end of the hut, and I ran for all I was worth, against the door. And this poor guy just happened to be on the other side of the door. So when the door came down, it was on him. And door's going like this, and I figured, uh-oh, there's somebody under there. And he got out, and I got rid of him, and then I unlocked the other ones, opened them up, and we all left. Now, some of the guys were in a lot better shape than the other ones were. One guy I carried out myself, and I ran for, that night, next day, the next night, and into the next day. Before I got back to our lines, and we didn't have shoes because they didn't want us to have them, knowing that if we did escape, it would, we would be easier to catch. So, but by the time I got him back, he had died in my arms, but and he had withered away. As luck would have it, it turned out he was the only friend I had in the school, and I didn't even know he was in the camp. And he had gone from, I would say, 205, 210 pounds down to perhaps 90. It was like nothing left of him. And at first, I didn't even know it was him. And I'm like looking like, oh my God, it's Jimmy. And at least I got to the point where his body got home, and so he wasn't in MIA or something. His, parents knew what had happened. But so I stayed over there for a while because I'd been like wounded. I was shot in the head twice, and then I got back to the States, and then I spent my last amount of time on a base in the Oregon area there. And the service did not want me anymore because I had been in on things I wasn't supposed to have been in on, or we weren't supposed to have been in on, but stuff happens on both sides in a war, and not that I never saw us do anything wrong. I mean, you hear all the tales, we did this and that, I never saw us do any of that. I saw us do more of like a kid was left without the parents and stuff, and we found a place for the kids and all like that. Now that's the stuff that I saw. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen and somebody would go over and go nuts, from the effects of the war and all like that, but what I saw was the other side, and what I saw was the enemy doing more of, the other. Now that being said, I don't, and even having seen a lot of the stuff and having gone under the torture while I was in the camp and all, it's like I don't hold the grudge against them. It was a war, okay? We were there fighting them, and they were, were fighting us. But it's like, there'd be no way, like I know a lot of the vets have gone over there on these little trips to try to get their minds like straightened out as to what happened, and I don't see the point there. I was there once and I didn't like it, and why would I want to go back?
And how long have you been in Vietnam?
I was in Vietnam just a little bit over 1 year, principally 1970.
Okay. And I think many have some good memories about what they did, how they helped others, and then of course there are some of the worst memories.
Okay. I'll do more focus on the good memories than anything else. As I've said on numerous occasions, the dog that I worked with, her name is Tony, because she's still alive in my heart. Tony was a very strong and powerful dog with her ability to do her job in Vietnam. Now I mentioned I went through training for scout dog handling. The dog handler goes through one 8-week period of training, but the dog goes through 2 training cycles, because the handler wants to know that dog can really do their job, much like all of the troops that you support walking behind you have confidence in that dog as well. I finished my training at Fort Benning, Georgia, in the Scout Dog School, and by the good fortune, Tony was the dog that I trained with for about the last 6 weeks, and then she was shipped to Vietnam the same time I was shipped. It was not the practice of the U.S. Army at that time to take the handler and the dog and ship them, because as I mentioned, the handler goes through 8 weeks, the dog goes through 16 weeks, and so you would just not mesh up. But by good fortune, and I thank the good Lord every day for that, is Tony went over the same time I did. When we got into the center to get geared up and ready to hit the bush, Tony was there, and I begged to have her, and so I had to have that relation. So that's a good memory. One of the best memories is, as I mentioned, Tony was such a powerful dog, and I knew that she could do her job. I had to make sure I could do my job to make sure she could do her job, so we could support the troops behind us when we were walking point. And she did such a fabulous job. I mean, I've said it more than a couple of times as well. I'm one of the guys who can honestly say I owe my life to a dog. And she pulled us through a lot of stuff. She really did. It's just, those... One of the bad memories associated with that is she was so good, we would be asked they would request our services for certain missions and everything like that, but we took that as an honor. I took that as a great honor with my buddy Tony. Some of the bad memories again is why we were there, and getting into firefights, seeing your buddies hurt, seeing seeing your buddies, your dogs, other dogs of handlers that they were also harmed, killed, and what have you. So those are, without a lot of great elaboration, those are the terrible memories.
Can you tell us one more time how long you were a prisoner of war?
Yes, a year and a half, and I spent it all by myself. That was the first thing I ever happened, was solitary confinement. Just drives you right up a wall. And you can imagine all sorts of things. And periodically at night they'd send a bunch of the guards around with rifles and bayonets. And they used the word which I thought was kill was shot. That's CHA, and I don't know others or not, but they'd use that word a lot. And they'd go away. They were just playing mind games with me. I didn't get to play much myself, but they played it.
You said the Russians were trying to take you from the Chinese. The Russians were...
Oh, the Russians are up there all over the place. And every time I saw them, they wanted to hang me. The Russians were real good that way. But they were all over the area up there.
Were they not our allies like we were taught in school? Or?
Were they not the allies to the U.S. like we are taught in school now?
No, you never talk to them nice. A couple of times I had Russians that were younger. They smiled at me and everything. But most of those, all they want to do is hang me.
So they never fought with you guys against the Koreans or the Chinese?
Did they what?
The Russians, did they fight with you or against you?
Oh, they fought against us. They fought with the Koreans. I even run into a Russian pilot. The one that came shot me down. I don't know what he did or not. But I ran into him and talked through it, interpreted. He just asked me a few questions. Matter of fact, most of the time I was up there was very little military questions ever asked. It was political. Everything was political.
So, yeah, that was kind of interesting over there, you know. And probably I could have avoided a lot of it had I not say, hey, over here I volunteered to do this and that. Because most of the Air Force jobs were not that tough. You know, you went in, you still had to watch things, but I mean, you were right there on the base and you had the security around the base because they wanted the planes to be safe, you know. And so they did not want to lose that air support. But yeah, I'm still not, I'm still glad that I did that. Had I not, I mean, I wouldn't have been there for Jimmy. I wouldn't have gotten him back home. And even though I would have much preferred that he lived, you know, but so.
How long were you in the camp?
You know, it's like, I don't know for sure exactly, because I didn't keep track of the time. My guess is between 6 and 9 months, but I always, and you know, you see these movies where they scratch the things on the walls. I never bothered with that. I just kept looking for the chance to escape. And so I wasn't too concerned about the time. It's just like I wanted to be ready, focused and sharp for when the time, you know, arose. But I would have to say between 6 and 9 months, right in there. And I'm thinking more towards like 9 months.
Part of Pavlov's theory, teach a man to lie and he'll lie forever. And that's what they wanted to do, they could lie. In other words, when they asked a question, they wanted an answer. They didn't care whether it was the right answer. And I didn't know that till I got back, because I ran into a lot of that. They'd ask questions which I had no way of knowing.
Can you grab me a napkin from in there, please?
And the old name, rank, and serial number never applied this for.
Well, let's see what
They had ways of making you tell it.
I made that too there, too.
Like what?
And one of the things he did to me was bother me more than anything. He let me write a letter to my wife. And they kept it for about 3 months. They'd show it. I said, "Do you want this to go to your wife?"
Appreciate it.
Hell yes, I want to go to my wife. And they would keep it. And they fenced probably mailed it over 3 or 4 months after I moved. And there was nothing to propaganda anyway. I got it 3 days. I wasn't going to worry then. So I just said, I feel great, I'm eating great, lied right my teeth.
What other ways were you trying to talk?
torture. They'd keep you up for hours on it. They started at 8 in the morning and run it through to 8 the next morning. And you sit there and you dozed off like you did. Then they'll get you the ribs. And truck will take you out and shoot you. Just the routine stuff. Well, we knew all those techniques. It didn't make them any easier, but they weren't really going to kill anybody. Well, they killed a lot of people. Of the names I gathered, 20 or 30 or 40, I don't remember now. None of them came home. So they were up there alive, and they died somehow. And the worst thing about it was the kids that were dying were just that, they were kids. I'd been a flight instructor in the States, and I'd instructed on this particular airplane. And I knew all the kids went through. We all instructed other people's kids, and they were the ones that were dying. And you just feel so bad for them, you know. I mean, kids 20 years old, 21, they're splattered all over the damn hillside.
And let me know if I'm pushing too far, but I talked to another gentleman. He was a POW in Korea, and the food kind of stuck with him. So if they fed you, what did they feed you?
Crap. I didn't even want to look at it. I just ate whatever I could handle. And it was disgusting stuff. It was, for the most part, some kind of rice-like thing, but then again it wasn't, you know, and it was half the time you would get something that was like moldy almost, and you look at it like, and then you think, but I gotta eat something, you know, so went ahead and ate it. They never had meat in there of any kind, which is probably just as good, because before I wound up in a camp, sometimes would hit a village here and there and would eat some of the local food, and I have a feeling that a lot of what I ate was dog, cat, rat. I ate just like, you know, you never, for what was supposed to be a certain cut of meat, it was never the same. I mean, I was a chef later for a while, and when you're used to seeing the meat be like this, and then all at once you see another kind where, it's the fat and stuff is stored in, different ways. You say, this isn't the same thing. So I think they ate a lot of that, and they had mainly the rice with some veggies mixed in. We didn't get the veggies much, and if we did, I'm sure it was whatever they didn't want. But it was tough, and it wasn't exactly the healthiest place to be, because I know we were one man to a shack, and the toilet facilities was nothing but a hole that was dug into one corner, and so you always had that odor in there. You had the flies from that, so that was annoying. You just had basically nothing on the the ground except for the dirt and an old blanket. And the good thing was, I think there, and I could see it being worse, like say in a place like Korea, where you have a lot of cold. Okay, Nam when I was there was never cold. It was always warm, most of the times hot. And so it was a good thing we had the one blanket because it could stay on the ground. I didn't have to have it over the top of me. So it was, you know, it was a bed, you know. So at least it provided, you know, a little bit. Then the rest was just wood with no windows, just really, the ceiling was low. I had to like duck on down, and I'm like 5'11", so, but then of course they were like 5'6", 5'5", so it's like, it didn't mean anything. Anything to them was plenty high. But, yeah, so the food wasn't good, and I'm sure that's why a lot of guys lost their weight. But I never looked. I just ate it. Yeah, I just ate it and got it done, and just hoped I wasn't going to die from the food. Yeah, which I didn't, but. So that's good, I guess. And other times too, when they came to some of the torture, I would just laugh at them, and laugh and laugh and laugh. And I think what happened was they thought that I was nuts, and a lot of folks around the world take that as like you're not only nuts, but you're possessed, and they don't want to be around that. And it's like in a way there's fear that you know, the demon that's in you is going to go ahead and, you know, and jump into them. So I think a lot of times it helped because it'd stop, and it would be like, whoa, you know. And then they'd leave and they'd wait a couple days and then come back again. But it was basically usually the same stuff over and over and over again. I guess to see if you had been broken down any and you were going to divulge anything you hadn't, you know, in the past. But like I say, and at times I still wondered, like, had I really known anything, would I have divulged it or not? And I like to think that no, I would not, but you know, you can't really say because I didn't know. and I couldn't divulge it anyway, so it's kind of a moot point. But, and in a way that was good. And I think it was harder on the guys who knew what they were doing, and more folks were in on things. Of course, the rest of my team had been killed already. So I was the only one there left of that particular team, and so, and even then, I didn't even after we went out on a mission and did this and that and stuff, and we would go ahead, explode a bridge here or building there or whatever. And I never knew why it was that particular bridge or that particular part of a road. And it didn't matter. It was just like, this thing has to go. So, and in a way that made it all easier. You just went ahead and did it, It was only a bridge, it was only a road, it was only a building. The only time that I did not blow up the intended target was, this might sound a little bit weird, but was occupied at the time. And not just with the enemy, it was basically what it was. It was it's a whorehouse. And no way could I blow up these women. I mean, they were, and I said, no, I'm not gonna go in there. He says, there's innocent, there's innocent folks. Well, we're supposed to take out that building. I said, well, get them on out of there first. And then we had to wait until everyone was out, and then I went ahead and did it. But I wasn't gonna do it when was folks in there that didn't deserve to die, Had it just been them, fine, wham, you're toast. But, so.
So, how was it for you coming back home?
It was fine. It was fine.
Got a lot of living to do before I kind of one of these plants.
I couldn't sleep at night. I had a hard time sleeping. And I had a hard time sleeping out of bed. I slept on the floor for a month or so. Then I had trouble with my lights at night. In the prison camp, I'd always had lights on. And occasionally they found the reservoir and turn out the lights. And that, by time, was in the dark. They were scared to death in the dark. And so I felt real comfortable with the lights on, but I felt a lot better with them out. You were nervous, you didn't like crowds, things like that. But when you live alone that much, to this day, I'm not a big crowd fan. I don't really do that.
So, how long did it take you to adjust back home?
So far, it's taken 60 years. I still haven't adjusted. Now, I have some very bad dreams every once in a while. And it's been 53, it's been 47, 60 years. And I still have the dreams. And I'm like all the guys that have bad times. They live them, we live them.
After you returned, what was the hardest part to adjust to? I mean, did you have help coming back to readjust, to deal with whatever came with you from them?
Well, it was like the immediate coming back was really weird, because when I had gone over there, a lot of things that were going on here had changed, okay? Minor thing, okay, the Beatles, they had that page hair, and I come back, they had the real long hair. We had the hippies. We didn't have them when I went over there, I'm like looking like, what the heck happened? And so you had all of this stuff happening. But the one thing that really angered me was when I got off the plane in San Francisco, and all these, what I learned later were hippies, okay? The supposed peace folks were attacking a guy in a chair that didn't have any legs with their, signs. Well, I showed them what I could do with their signs. And of course, the MPs said, okay, you're gonna go over here until the plane but to me, that didn't make any sense, because here are these folks saying, okay, we are against the war and this and that, but we're gonna go ahead and attack these people. Well, they were, that was like wrong, and so that was hard to figure out. And the only good thing about that was, and I still remember it clear as a bell to the day, was when I was over in this side area, it was kind of like a secured area. Jimi Hendrix and the band was there. And Hendrix had been in the Army for a while. And he was asking me stuff about what was happening over in Nam and what had happened. And he was really like wanting to know what happened over there. And I thought he was a real nice guy, pleasant guy, you know. Of course, he overdid the drugs and he died a couple of years after that, but was a really nice guy. But I could see, even when I got off the plane in the Denver area, you could see the change in the town, just in the time that I was gone. That town was really great for the service guys. When I got back to get married, it had like changed. They like hated us, and I'm like, what, you know? So I just couldn't see that. And of course now you get all the folks that say, you know, we're sorry, we shouldn't have done this and all like that. And then, you know, can you accept the fact that we were wrong and this and that? And I say, no. I said, you were wrong then. I said, as far as I'm concerned, wrong is wrong. And, you know, so, and I guess a lot of people think if you just put out the olive branch, that's it, that's going to be the end of it, and you're just going to say, okay, fine. But nah, I hold a grudge. I hold the grudge forever. So, I don't know.
And then coming back, how did you adjust? I mean, were you still in the service, and did you get help to adjust from the war scene to coming back stateside?
Okay. I would like to comment a little bit when I did leave. When I left the Army, I did not go continue my service. I had met my obligation in what have you. But it was one of the hardest things in life to leave Tony. I got to come home, and she didn't. And excuse me, but that still bugs me today. So that was a terrible memory. But I did. I wanted to come home to my family. I wanted to get excuse the expression, I wanted to really get the hell out of Vietnam, because it was not a good place. There's just no doubt about that, because of the war and that type of thing. But coming home, was there assistance for adjustment and getting into the new walk of life? Again, this was 2 years of military service and some contact with the civilian world, but the last 12 plus months was not with civilian. It was a whole different environment, and no, I did not get any assistance. Was I greeted with open arms like many of the returning soldiers, Marines, sailors? No. Walked down the concourse of the San Francisco airport and was basically belittled. The stories of being spat upon are true, being cursed at, being called a baby killer. That's fact. That's not made up. That's not Hollywood or anything like that. That is fact. That hurt, but you just get on. But no, there was no assistance at that point in time. You just were assembled back into society and hoped you could do the best you could do.
And Howard, what were some of the things you and your family, dealt with? How did you try to make the adjustment?
I probably shelled up. I went into my shell more often than I should have. Certainly you wrote home, you wrote letters home and telling your folks and your loved ones how you were doing, and that you'd see them soon and all other good stuff, but we didn't know. You truly didn't know, and you got home and you didn't talk about it. You just didn't talk about it. My father served in World War II. My brother also served in Vietnam prior to me, and other uncles also served either in Korea conflict or World War II in various branches of military service, and you just didn't talk about it. And probably in the long run, I probably wasn't very healthy. And when you had an opportunity to get with a veteran who experienced a little bit of what you experienced, sometimes, not frequently, not very often, maybe you might talk about some of those things, but most often not. So mostly internalized it and lived with it.
Came back stateside when you got out of the camp, the cell you were in. Did you receive help in coping with all of this from the
Yeah, they tried to help me everywhere. I talked to every doctor, every psychiatrist at the Air Force ever had. And most of them real good. You just can't explain how you feel. You're hungry every day. Like I said, I lost 80 pounds or something. And I was hungry all the time. And I'll give you an example of my fear. I got rice and boiled cabbage in the morning. And the rice and boiled cabbage, onions, fried onions at night. I ate that for months on end.
What are some things that help you get back to your civilian life and, in a sense, I guess, start over again?
I don't know. I drank a ton of whiskey when I came back. It probably doesn't help, but it helped me. And I went into Grandview Air Force Base. There was a commanding general down there. He says, you POWs, I think there was 3 of us there, could do no wrong. He says, do any damn thing you want. And he says, I'll get you out of it. We took him at his word. We were pretty honored.
So what was your 3 that he needed to get you out of?
Jail. I never got in, but they did. I was very lucky when I got caught. But we just went out and raised hell.
And we talked earlier before I had the camera up a little bit about, certain things that stay with you, like you mentioned the fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
And is that one of the biggest thing, or is there still those moments where I guess something just kind of takes you back?
We were talking about the 4th of July and fireworks and that, and I cannot watch, I can watch fireworks, but I cannot be close to fireworks. To hear especially if I'm in close proximity, the concussion from some of those larger aerial displays and everything else, that just, it brings stuff back. There are occasions where I will wake up at night, and for some reason I'm back right where I was some 40 years ago. And it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but it's there. So I've just come with the grips of it, that's just, it's going to be there for the balance of my life, and you just go through it, and just turn to God for the strength to get through it. So it's still there after all those years, and I, you talk with other guys. One of my best friends in life, we just had dinner the other night. We went through the school together. He did the same doggone thing in Vietnam because we walked the same path for the most part, and he's got his bugaboos too and everything else, but just got to suck it up and get on with it.
55. Or 54, I guess. Yeah, 54. December 54. And I'd been in 10 years. I was going to make a career out of it anyway, so I decided it's time to get out. I give them 10 years, and that was enough. I had 2 wars. I didn't care for any more wars. And in Korea, every time we rolled in on a bomb run, we'd see like 19 million Chinese down there shooting. The amount of flak was just unbearable. There's no sense in living like that, If I'd stayed in, I'd have been in Vietnam. I didn't need that. we joke around quite a bit about what was going on, how we're killing innocent people and bombing this and bombing. We really didn't mean it. All we wanted was out of there. Do 100 and go home. I was going to do 100 in the 51, then go do 100 in the F-86, which was all air-to-air, which is what I wanted, air-to-air combat, not air-to-ground. But like I said, I didn't make it, so.
So what did you do after you got out of the service?
What?
What did you do after you got
Oh, I
out?
went with airlines. I signed up with airlines almost immediately. And flew for them for 25 years, which was a good job, a good paid job, and a nice job. Worked nice hours. Not a lot of the guys that I flew with were former Air Force pilots, so we all understood each other. And they didn't bother me, and I didn't bother them.
What was the adjustment going from combat pilot basically to flying an airline?
Oh, none. A flyer's a flyer. All airplanes fly alike. They look different and everything, but they're no different. A big commercial airline is just the same as flying a 351, a single seat airplane. You just can't do as much with them. The fighters were always fun, and like I say, I instructed in them a couple of years, and the kids really liked it because I played around a lot with them, and they were getting combat lessons and didn't know it. I showed them how to formation, how to break it up, how to call out flak, or what to do when you call it out, all that stuff. Things that they would need in Korea, because they went to Korea. Well, those kids maybe have 300 hours total. I had 2,000 fighters alone. And I had some multi-engine time. But they really sent these kids over there lambs to slaughter. I mean, that's all we were up there in North Korea. We just dragging the MiGs up so they could be shot down by our F-86s.
And the way I deal with it is, since I am a writer, I can let it out however I want. And but a lot of people say, well, why don't you write a story about what happened in Nam? And it's like, it'd be just one of how many other books on what happened. Who the heck cares what happened to me? I'm just one guy when I was in Nam, you know. What if I take one little piece here, put it into a horror tale, and let somebody read this and say, hey, now wait a second, maybe that's like, you know, true. And another piece here and another one, and, you know. And for me, that works.
And I have to ask, I talked to Paul Kniss.
Mm-hmm.
He recently got his Purple
Purple Heart, POW medal, right?
Yes.
Rightfully so.
Yes. And he told me he was on a trip to Washington, D.C. once, and he had troubles getting around, and there came this gentleman who offered him, you know, to help him out, and got him a wheelchair and pushed him around, and it turned out to be you.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me a little bit about
Okay.
it.
What that hero was referring to is the honor flight, Wyoming honor flight. A great effort by Wyoming citizens and past military folks that raised funds to take World War II heroes back to Washington, D.C. so that they could visit the World War II memorial, which, as we all know, was far too long in becoming reality. So Honor Flight Wyoming, again, raised money, and the heroes were flown back there, and I served as a, as just a can't remember our titles, what the heck we are, but it was kind of a chaperone. No, we were there to help those World War II veterans. And yes, Paul was struggling, 86 years of age, I believe he is right now, so this was a couple years ago. So in his mid-80s, he had the opportunity to at least go to World War II memorial. And I saw that he was struggling, and he shouldn't have been struggling, and so, yep, just stepped forward. And so we developed a little bit of a comrade in arms type of relationship there. He, World War II, Korea, myself, Vietnam, and it didn't make any difference as far as what war, conflict we were in. We still had that respect for one another. So, yeah, he's a hell of a man.
Yeah.
For lots of reasons.